Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to let you know that we're going to get started here with our speaking engagement with Mark Griffin. So I wanted to welcome Mark to come up. So as you know, Mark is with In His Name HR, a Christian business consulting firm, and there are papers on every table so you can read through a description to learn more about his business.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank Messiah for inviting me here. I'm honored to be here to speak to you. I have some really good information to share with you, information that I've gained from many years of experience of being in human resources, leading HR for some large companies, but also I think for the students that are here, some information for you to help prosper you and help excite you as you move forward with your career, because I've also spent some time helping people, coaching people to success in their career. I also want to recognize Heather Weller. Heather, if you'd stand. Heather is our HR manager. She works for us at In His Name HR. She'll be at the back of the room today as you exit, sharing some information with you. I'd like to also introduce Angela Wart. Angela is our marketing representative that helps us with marketing our programs. Angela will be in the back of the room as well. I'd like to start out a little bit about myself and go in a little bit about me personally and my background. Again, as I said at the beginning, I really enjoy my career in human resources, and I'm blessed to have lived the career that I've had these past 25 years. I've held senior level positions at companies like Quaker Oats Company, Kodak, Merck Pharmaceutical Company. And I worked with some of the best HR professionals in the world. I had the privilege of working with the Gatorade division of Quaker Oats right after Quaker Oats acquired the Gatorade brand from Stokely Van Camps. So I was privileged to work with a group of HR professionals that partnered with the president of Gatorade to take the brand from what was just under a couple $100 million to a several billion-dollar organization. I also learned a lot about organizational development from companies like Kodak and Merck Pharmaceutical, working with some of the best and brightest HR talent that's out there in the field. I'm also blessed to have got my bachelor's degree in human resources and my master's degree, but I also continued professional education at the University of Michigan to help me excel in human resources. I've had several international roles where I've done human resources for different areas of the world, spent some time in Amsterdam, did support work for India, China, Central America. But throughout my career, I kind of had a longing of what do I want to be doing? What should I be doing? And how should I be helping the world? I always knew I wanted to do consulting and have an impact on the world and give back to a much broader amount of organizations, but I never really thought of how I would do that. I always dreamed of doing it in my late 50s or 60s as I retire and then go out and do it to be a consultant. But really what happened is I became a human resources vice president, and that was my goal, my dream, and I pretty much self-actualized because my whole career, everything that I did, I was building up to be the vice president of human resources. While I accomplished that, I got into the role, became comfortable, made tremendous impact. When I really felt the Lord calling me onto my heart that, hey, it's time for you to start this organization, this consulting organization. So roughly about 3.5 years ago, I set out to do that. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience developing this HR practice that I could take the best from top organizations like Quaker and Merck and bring them to smaller organizations. Some of the organizations that we support, I would have never dreamed of 5 years ago that we would support. We support some organizations that are as small as 11 people in their organization. But through right human resources practices and right programs that we bring to these companies, we've watched this small organization go from $5 million in sales to almost $7.5 million in sales in just a couple years. So we also support larger organizations, where there's 100 or 200 employees, where we help leverage what they currently have in place with what our background is. Now also, from the personal side, I'm married to Gail. We have 2 awesome children. I have an adult son, 27 years old. I have an adult daughter. She's approaching 20. Adam went to Central Michigan University, and he's an IT professional, does great work in the area of IT. My daughter Emily goes to Bloomsburg University, where she's studying marketing, and she's in her 2nd year. Gail and I have been married for over 28 years, and we've had a wonderful, wonderful marriage together. She's a radiation oncology nurse, and God's given her a great opportunity to minister to people as they find out that they have cancer. So we all have unique giftings and we all have unique talents, and I'm blessed to have a family that are in the right spot helping people where they are. I'd like to tell you a little bit about me personally too, and take it back to the time when I was about 16 years old. I've always been goal-oriented. I've always wanted to do some crazy things. But when I was 16 years old, I actually rode over 800 miles on a bicycle. So it's pretty funny that I rode this 800 miles on a bicycle. Now I'm living in Lancaster County with so many folks riding bicycles around the county. It's pretty unique. But we started out in Carson City, and we rode all the way down to San Diego. Okay, I talked about my experiences at Fortune companies. I told you a little bit about my personal life. Now, what I'd like to talk about is how most employees want to succeed. I think this is the most important thing that I'd like you to leave with today, and that's, I talked to hundreds of employees, and the common theme that I hear from employees is they really don't truly know why they're there at the organization, why they exist, and what it is that they want to do. So I think over the last couple years, what's really come to my heart from a human resources perspective is not that employees are bad in the United States, because we hear stuff in the media all the time about unionizations and we're not paying enough wages and employees are lazy and we've lost our work ethic. My challenge to everybody is I think we've really lost a lot around the area of leadership with employees, and how do we lead? How do we set goals and expectations? How do we work with them to develop a job description so they know exactly what it is that they need to be doing? And all those things that are so important that we should be doing as leaders have really gone to the wayside. And it's not just with small organizations. When I started with Quaker Oats organization back in the early 90s, we had incredible training programs. You'd join the company, you'd become a frontline leader, they'd rotate you through for 5, 6, 7, 8 years through all these different roles that you would learn about being a leader within the organization. But as time went by and budgets got cut, larger companies started cutting those programs out completely. So the larger companies don't have a lot of leaders coming up through the organization. So again, we don't lack good employees, in my opinion. We lack leaders that are able to leverage what employees are about and what it is that they should be doing on a daily basis. So my next point, the first point in leading employees to success, is having a mission and vision for your organization. This sounds so simple to have, but most organizations that I run into, they just don't have a mission and vision and values for their company. And this is something, I'll go back again to Gatorade, because it is such an impactful company and it grew so large. They had a vision of, they wanted to be the #1 sports drink. That was the vision. That was the vision of the president. It was the vision of the third shift employee putting the Gatorade into the boxes at the end of the night. Everybody had that collective vision. That's what they went to work for every day. Michael Jordan came on board. People got excited. We're going to be the #1 sports drink in the world. That was the vision that the organization had. And it's probably the vision that they still have today. But it was something, as we're interviewing candidates, we could say, our vision is to be number one. I know you're going to be working on second shift on the bottling line, but how are you going to tie that into what you did every day? How are you going to tie that in? So having a mission, vision, and values is really important. Let me explain what each one is. The mission simply is what you do every day. Why do you come to work? What product are you delivering, and why are you delivering that product? That's your mission. And quite frankly, again, I talk to folks, especially with new organizations where we do roundtables or focus groups, and I ask the group, what's the mission of the organization? They're all over the place. But it should be something simplistic that everybody in the organization understands. The vision, again, is where are we going? Where are we going to go in 5 years or 8 years? Where's the organization going collectively? And then the values. The values are so important to every organization, whether it's a Christian-owned company or it's a secular company. Values are important. And I look back at some of the organizations that I worked at where values were very important. Although they were secular organizations, they had values that were biblical. They listed it on their mission, vision, values, and they were biblical values just like a Christian-owned organization would have. So the values is extremely important to the organization. So to get things started a little bit and to start some discussion within your tables, we'd like to have a little exercise. And what I'd like you to do amongst your table here for the next 5 or 10 minutes is talk about the mission, vision, values at your organization. Do you have one? Does it exist? Is it in place? What has the organization done to integrate the mission, vision, values into the HR processes? And I'm going to talk to you more about that after we have this little exercise of how you integrate that into place. How do employees live the mission every day? How do they come to work and leverage against that to accomplish what the organization is up to? And then how is a vision attainment measured? So again, alrighty, let's resume the presentation. We're going to make the first question really easy. By show of hands, who has a mission, vision, value in their organization? Put your hands up. Okay, now who doesn't? Who doesn't have a mission, vision, value in their organization? Well, this is awesome. It looks like most people have a mission, vision, value in your organization. That's great. The next question was, what has the organization done to integrate the mission, vision, value into the HR processes? Do we have a table that was able to come up with some ideas of what organizations are doing? That's fantastic. Most organizations fail with mission, vision, values when they create it. Maybe the management team goes off and they create it and then they hang it on the wall. That's probably the worst thing that you can do, is not including all your employees in the process. But they also fail when you hang it on the wall and then you don't do anything with it. So in my heart, the way that you integrate it into the practices is make it part of everyday living. Make it, as you interview candidates, it's part of the interview process, that the candidate gets a copy of the mission, vision, values, and they're asked, how are you going to support the mission, vision, values of the organization? We even go so far when we're recruiting for organizations and we run the ad, maybe the ad's out on Career Builder. We're putting the ad, here's a link to the organization's mission, vision, values. Please put in your cover letter how you're going to support the mission, vision, values. That speaks volumes on candidates, because many times candidates will blow it off and they don't even answer that question. If they can't answer a simple question that we're asking as they apply for a position, are they really going to be a good, solid candidate? So we build that into the recruitment process. There's other ways of building it in, just as the gentleman said, to the annual review process. Is the values built into the behavior aspects that you're measuring your employees against? It's so very important. I don't like to promote books, but I have to at this point. I wrote a book called How to Build a Kingdom-Minded Organization. And it does talk about all these different aspects of how to integrate human resources, or how to integrate your mission, vision, values into all the practices within HR. So the next question is, how do employees live the mission every day? Can I have a volunteer talk about that? Very good. Excellent example. Now to the final question. How is vision attainment measured? Did we get any good discussion around that? How is vision attainment measured? That's outstanding. Thank you. Vision is huge, not only for organizations to have, for their entire organization, but also for individuals. On what is your vision for yourself, for your life, for your career? Where are you going vision-wise? Where's the Lord leading you career-wise and within your family? You'd be surprised how many people that I meet in their 40s or 50s that come to me and say, Mark, I really want to find a new job. Can you help me? You have great connections. Can you give me some career coaching? And I'll say to them, what's your vision? Where are you going with your life? And they have no idea. I don't know. Well, what about health and family and education? And what do you want your life to be? They don't know. They have never really sat down and created vision for themselves. So it's huge. It's not only so important for big organizations, it's important for individuals as well. That was number one. Now we're going to go into number two, which is standard process for yearly goal and objective setting. Now, number three, we're going to talk about performance management. And we have a film we're going to run you through so that you can see an example of how not to have a performance management system. But many organizations don't have a standard process for yearly goal and objective setting, and that is so important for organizations to come up with 3 or 4 goals and objectives. Maybe the executive team goes off, they decide what the 3 or 4 goals and objectives are. They do it in November or December, and then come January, they're rolling those 3 or 4 goals and objectives out to all the employees throughout the whole organization so that the organization can see what the goals and objectives are for the company and how they can set their behaviors and their performance to achieve those objectives. And again, going back to high performance organizations, large secular companies, that's what they do. They come back and they say, our safety goal is 0 accidents for the year, and that goal is rolled down. Income measurements, quality, returns, days to hire is a great measurement for human resources. So everything can be measured, but you need a metric in place and you need a goal and objective that you can share with employees so that they can perform against those goals and objectives. Because again, I'll go back to talking to employees into organizations, and I'm sure if I went out to your organizations, I may hear similar things. Employees come to work, they want to do a great job. They really do. They want to come in, they want to hit the ball out of the ballpark. But many employees just don't know what that means. They don't know what the metric is. They don't know what is good. They don't know what's acceptable. A quick example, and then we're going to move on to number 3. When I was working for Gatorade again, we talked to employees on first shift. How many cases of Gatorade do you make in a shift? Well, we don't know. They had a general idea, but they really didn't know how many cases they made. Over a sustained period of time with the plant manager, with the quality control manager, the engineering manager, we came up with metrics that, hey, if you make 10,000 cases in a shift of this color and this size, you're breaking even. You're making money for the company. Once the employees saw that, they came in and they kicked butt. They wanted to make 10,000. They wanted to exceed 10,000. They started making 12,000 and 13,000. They started competing against second and third shift. That's the spirit of the United States. That's the spirit of America's is, hey, we're gonna do great and we're gonna have competition. So when you find the goals and objectives, work with your employees and set them, I'm telling you, they're gonna achieve it. So that's number 2, standard process for yearly goal and objective setting. Number 3 is performance management process. Let me go over a little bit about what my thinking is around performance management process before we get into the video, but I'm just going to say it. Many organizations have terrible programs. They just do. We go and they have 12-page performance management programs. Everybody just hates it. They don't like doing it. They never meet. They meet every 2 years. Half the people do it, half don't. I've gone into other organizations where they're just slim. They're a half a page, or it's almost written on a napkin. It's not even formal. It's not even set out across the organization for everybody to do professionally. I believe a good performance management system can be accomplished in any organization, but the pivotal point is the employee has to own the system. If the employee owns the system, they own the program, and it's employee driven, you're going to have success. You're going to have absolute success. When the management team owns it, it's never going to get done because managers have way too many employees. They can't be doing 12, 13, 15 and doing all the writing. The employees have to take the goals and objectives that you give them. They need to go back and they need to formulate what they're going to do to achieve those goals and objectives. They need to do the administrative work around the performance management system and present it to their superior, to their boss. We can't have bosses doing it for 12, 15 people. It just doesn't work. So we find a simpler system, and also including career development, makes a really big difference in organizations. Again, when the employees own it, it's simplistic, but it ties back to that goal and objective setting that we talked about in point number 2. So now I'd like to show you a film of what I believe happens in many organizations around performance management. So there you have it. That's a typical example of sometimes the things that we run across in different organizations. The key issue here is the absolute lack of communication. The manager talking to the employee talking to the manager. And again, a really good system isn't going to be done where it's annual, setting the goals and objectives, and then a year later meeting with the manager. A good system puts the ownership on the employee to own the process, but also has the employee set up the meetings with the manager. They go on the calendar program, set up a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, or worse would be quarterly, because 3 months is a long time to wait for feedback. But getting the employee to spark that dialogue with their manager. Because again, when you put the manager responsible of 15 people and handling all that, they typically can't do it, and they can't do it very well. So we try to empower employees to take ownership of the program and do the bulk of the work themselves, with managers doing the final approval. So that's number 3. The next area I'd like to talk about is number 4 is improvement plans. And improvement plans are simply a program that would be in addition to your performance management system or your annual review process. It's a program that you put in place that would accelerate giving rehabilitation back to an employee's performance. It could be 30 days in length, it could be 60 days in length, it could be 90 days in length, but it is a formal program that when you have an employee that's failing in their role, that you can sit down, you can talk with that employee, and you could say, we're entering you into a performance improvement program. You need to turn your performance around, or you're really not going to fit within the organization. And again, it'd be a great program where the employee owns it. You tell them their deficiencies, and then they come up with the plan to close the gaps in their performance. So next, what I'd like to do is have another table discussion. We're going to take about 10 minutes, about 5 minutes actually. And without divulging names or organizations, what experience do you have with poor performers? Let's keep it private, not talk about specific organizations, but what experience do you have with poor performers? Did your organization have a system to deal with the poor performance? Did they do anything to try to rehabilitate the employee? Because sadly, I meet with employees many times after they get terminated, maybe through outplacement, and I'll say, did you know that you were, no, nobody ever told me. They just brought me in one day and they let me go. Well, that's not how we should be doing things. I don't believe that's how biblically we should be managing our employees. We should be letting them know well in advance when they're not performing. And then what skills were necessary for management to have in dealing with the poor performer? So let's take a quick 4 or 5 minutes. I'm going to call on some tables to get some ideas, and then we'll keep rolling. Thank you. That's excellent. That's an excellent example. And We find that in so many different organizations. We do leadership assessments on key management teams, and many times we find within the supervision ranks where somebody was a really good widget maker and they did great and they produced high quality and mass volumes, but the owner thought, well, if they produce so well and they do great quality, then I'll make them a supervisor, then all the employees are going to be just like this employee. And that's not necessarily the case. And many times we find out in organizations, half of the supervisory ranks shouldn't be in those roles. And when we talk to the supervisors, sometimes they cry. I don't know how I got here. I don't know why I'm in this role, but I don't want to be in this role. I can't lead people. And they're in over their head because all of a sudden they wake up, they're 6 years into the role, they're making a lot of money, they got a boat to pay for and a kid to get through college, and then you have somebody in a role that they shouldn't be. So it's so important to have great HR practices to not allow that person to get in that role because it's hurtful to them. And a lot of times organizations are responsible for that. So the next question was, did your organization have a system to deal with the poor performer? Do we have an example from another table where you had a system to deal with the poor performer? And that's a great example that Jay has, and that happens in many organizations where managers aren't trained, they don't hold employees accountable, and then they pass employees off. And then again, it's not really fair to that employee when all of a sudden they wake up one day and they're being held accountable. So that's a great example, Jay. Thank you. And that is so important. And many organizations, because of budgets or they just don't have a professional HR department, they don't have onboarding. They don't have onboarding for new employees. So there's two different programs. There's orientation. Orientation is your I-9 form, filling out documents, getting enrolled in benefits, learning where the bathroom is, fire drills. That's orientation. But onboarding is a month-to-month, year-and-a-half program of how do we assimilate this person into our culture because we care about them so much that we invited them to join the organization, and how do we make them successful? And many organizations don't do that. And that's upsetting. It's sad when I go into an organization and I'm walking through on my own and I meet somebody in the cafeteria and I start talking to them and I realize they're into the job 6 weeks and they know nobody. They don't know anybody. Nobody's gone out of their way. You got a cliquey group over here, a cliquey group over here. The managers are running off at lunch on their own. And here's this poor employee, doesn't know anybody. And at the same time, the owner's going, why do we have turnover? I don't understand. We're paying a lot. Well, guess what? Paying a lot doesn't make a difference anymore. It really pays an important issue, but people need a great place to go to work. Sometimes the only consistency people have is the workplace. That's the only consistency they have because they go home and they have wrecked lives. They have issues with their children or a spouse that left or whatever the problems are in their family. So when they go to work, work should be a bright spot and it should be inviting and they should be engaged and do a great job. And that's what great organizations do. Now, number 5, real briefly, managing employees to success, have a handbook in place, have it updated, have your mission, vision, value in the front of it, have your rules and your procedures and your policies reflecting your mission, vision, values. Make sure it's light, engaging, and employees want to read it and understand it. And again, infuse your culture into the handbook. It shouldn't be something to hit employees over the head, but things like discipline should be outlined in it. And back to Jay's point, we're living in a litigious society. It's unbelievable what happens out in the workplace with some of the greatest organizations that I work with get accused of the craziest things. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, everybody is protected and can file a lawsuit against an employer except for one group of people. Does anybody know what that one group of people is? White males under 40. That's exactly right. Anybody else can file a lawsuit and say, I was discriminated against because I'm this minority or a woman or disabled or whatever the issues are. So if you don't have a handbook, if you don't have a management team following the procedures, you're not managing your organization correctly, but you're also putting your organization in danger for the risk of a lawsuit. And you don't need that. That's not where we need to be spending our time. We need to be spending our time growing our organizations for the good of all the people so that they have continued employment. Now next, finally, number 6, discipline process used. I look at performance improvement plan more on daily performance, not getting the job done, not being aligned with your job description, not being aligned with your goals and objectives. I look at discipline more from a tactical perspective of, I came into work intoxicated, or I wrecked the company vehicle because I was horseplaying, or whatever those issues are more of the discipline issues that we run into in all organizations. So great organizations need to have a discipline process, and it's got to be used on a regular basis, not only in crisis situations. And again, I look at it as it's biblical. If you don't work, you don't eat. The Bible says that clearly. So people need to follow the discipline system and be reminded. So let me review our 6 components: mission, vision, values, standard process for yearly goal setting, performance management process, performance improvement plans, a handbook in place and signed forward, and discipline process used. Other things that you can use that I haven't gone into today for the sake of the time is offer letters. Huge opportunity to infuse the mission, vision, values into the organization. Confidentiality agreements. We help a lot of organizations with confidentiality agreements because employees are going to work there and come across things that shouldn't be shared out into the community or with other companies. Non-compete agreements. If you hire somebody at a higher level, how do we make sure that they're not going to leave and compete against you? And then finally, partnership agreements. In organizations where family members are working together and they want to formalize something a little better because they're going into 2nd and 3rd generation. So this closes up our presentation today. And again, I want to go back to what I said in the beginning, and I mean it. We're not lacking employees that want to do a great job in the United States. I really believe that. We have wonderful people in the United States, and we're a great country. I really ask you and beg you to make sure that you go back and you put the right programs in place to help make your organization prosperous. Now, in closing, you're welcome to visit us online, follow us on Twitter, visit us on Facebook. What we're going to do is Angela and Heather, as you leave today, we're going to give you information that you can take with you. If you're interested, we have a human resource toolkit that we provide to organizations to help them with many of the things that we talked about. We're also having a more deeper workshop on this subject at the Junction Center at WJTL in October. It's going to be 4 or 5 hours. Lunch is going to be included. We're really excited about that because we're going to take several of these concepts and blow them up, make them a little bit bigger for people. So I want to thank all of you. I'm honored that you all came to hear what I had to say, and I want to pray blessing over you. God bless. Thank you.